Hello, friends. You've stumbled across a short clip from the Daily Switch 2 podcast, which, believe it or not, is a podcast that is about the Switch 2 with new episodes released daily. What will they think of next?
I'm still baffled that we never got any kind of proper substantial DLC for Mario Odyssey. They could have easily charged decent money for another set of levels. Seemed like a no-brainer. I felt the same about DK Bananza, and I felt pretty sure that eventually we would get DLC, but it would probably be a long time coming, but pretty darn substantial when it drops. But Nintendo never does what people expect them to do, or even what seems the most logical way for them to make the fans happy and sell a buttload more games. It's often frustrating being a Nintendo fan, but it's excellent games like DK Bananza that keep us hooked, despite all the weirdness. But right now, as it stands, even ignoring what I wanted this DLC to be and instead just taking it at face value, a reviewer shouldn't review a product for what it could be in the future with updates after feedback. Despite our modern culture of patches, updates, and games never truly being finished, simply eventually abandoned, but instead we do have to review only what it is available at the time of said review. And the time of this review is a weird one. It's surprising that we got this DLC so early. As I said, Nintendo are nothing if not unpredictable. On the Switch 1, it typically took a very long time to get DLC for first-party titles. Well over a year in most cases. I'm thinking Happy Home Paradise for Animal Crossing, Splatoon's Octo expansion and side orders, the booster pass for Mario Kart 8, the special episode levels for Captain Toad. I love Treasure Tracker, by the way, one of my favourite ever games, and the same developer as DK Bananza and Mario Odyssey. Odyssey itself eventually got that aforementioned Luigi's Balloon World. Is that like the fifth time I've said it now? And also a VR demo mode for the Labo kit. Breath of the Wild had a Labo VR mode too. I wonder if these will be made compatible with the Virtual Boy accessories that they're making. It's essentially exactly the same kit, just in a fancier shell. Side-by-side SBS 3D with asymmetric and biconvex lenses, so there's no reason that it can't be added back in for those playing on the Switch too. Could be interesting for them to revisit it. Anyway, all of these DLC packs came long after the games had launched, when the hype had basically completely subsided for the games. People had moved on to other pastures, and they gave us reason to come back. But here we are with paid DLC for Bananza only around 2 months after it was released, and less than 6 months into the life of the console itself, at a time when Bananza is arguably the exclusive flagship game and the main reason to pick one up this early in the console's lifespan. A console and game which are already pretty darn expensive. And many newcomers now just picking up the system and game are going to instantly be hit with the option to pay even more to expand the game the second that they turn it on after unpacking. That is a pretty rough look, as this early on it just makes it seem like you've bought an incomplete game. It's not day one DLC, but I mean it might as well be for most people who will statistically play this game. Most of the Switch 2's eventual customer base haven't taken the plunge yet. And other than whatever pack-in game they might get, probably Mario Kart, or after mid-October, likely Pokemon Legends ZA, another game that got an announcement for DLC coming pretty soon after launch, announced in the same direct as this one, so both are being somewhat lumped together for their consternation. But let's consider that for a minute. On the one hand, the DK Bananza DLC seems preferable to the Pokemon one. It's $20, whereas the Pokemon one is $30, and it's being announced after the launch, not before it. But looking a bit deeper, it might be that the Pokemon DLC will actually turn out to be the better buy. While the teaser trailer during the Direct made it appear like it was just a new Mega Evolution for Raichu and a new costume for your trainer with X and Y variations of both, which would frankly be scandalous at $30. In fact, looking further into it, it does seem that the DLC will be much larger and have much more gameplay and campaign content, as well as more Pokemon and other stuff hinted at, and we will be getting a drip feed of information between now and the launch. The Pokemon trailer in the Direct was cool and stylish, but from a content perspective, it looked underwhelming and left many people with a negative impression because it looked like the DLC would be bare bones. If anything, the trailer for this DK Bananza DLC had the exact opposite problem. It looked far more interesting and substantial than it actually is. Quick TLDR review, I suppose. Were I asked to give one by a friend down the pub, it would be... What's included here is cool, especially for the big long-term fans like me, but it feels very disappointingly empty and underdeveloped given the potential of the concept, and I absolutely feel like it should have been included on the cartridge from day one, probably as free unlockable bonuses after you complete the game. That would have been perfect. In fact, as a game dev myself, it absolutely feels like this was exactly the plan until Nintendo somehow decided that they could make a bit more money by charging extra for it. I don't know that to be the case, of course, but it definitely feels exactly like it from a design perspective. If the content of this DLC was always intended to be standalone and sold separately, then the obvious things that I mentioned that are missing 100% would have been thought of, planned, and then scrapped last minute with Nintendo deciding to release a blatantly unfinished product to hit a specific release date and fill out the forthcoming spaces on the calendar, like seems to have happened with Jamboree TV and Drag X Drive, neither of which contained the most basic of stuff that anyone hearing about their existence would just assume must be there because they wouldn't be a real product without them. It's these kind of omissions that lose player trust. But that doesn't seem likely to be the case when you take the overall quality of DK Bananza. It's one of the most overly designed and overly polished games that I've ever played. On the other hand, if DK Isle was originally meant to just be the reward for completing the game, purposefully devoid of actual gameplay challenge as it is essentially DK and Pauline's retirement home after they've saved the day and there's no more peril, and the Emerald Rush mode is just another unlockable bonus mode like the Rambi one, again, story-wise, it only makes sense after the main campaign is over, so again, it seems like a completion reward. Then, this goes from a seemingly unfinished and unfleshed-out new campaign to instead just two fun, fan-pleasing, unlockable little bonuses that were always just intended to be on the cart from day one and were in the design documents all along. In fact, in the follow-up to my review, after I eventually completed the game, one of my few complaints about DK Bananza is that there's barely any reward for completing the game, let alone 100%ing it, and I hoped for more interaction with the other characters like Diddy, Dixie, etc. If DK Isle unlocked as a free explorable bonus with the Kongs after you complete it, I would have been so hyped, and it would have made me feel even more positive about the game than I already did. And the Emerald Rush mode, with its roguelike elements, in theory gives ultimate infinite replayability for those that want to keep coming back again and again after they have done literally everything else that there is to do. Would have been perfect for a bonus for 100% completion, as it gives another thing for the kind of person who will want to come back and perfect your speedruns, etc. In my original coverage, I gave the game a 10 out of 10, whilst stating that it wasn't quite perfect, but close enough that I felt a 10 was justified. Again, the first 10 that I have actually ever given in my multi-decade-long reviewing career. I also stated that considering how polished, well-designed and basically perfect DK Bananza felt, especially when compared to Mario Kart World, I was shocked that Nintendo felt like it was a $70 game when compared to Mario Kart's $80 after the justification that they'd given for that. Sadly, I think that what we have here is a case of, I was right, I just didn't realize it at the time. Nintendo did consider DK Bananza a better, bigger, more polished game than Mario Kart. They wanted to charge more for it, but didn't feel that the public would like it very much. If they truly felt that Mario Kart was worth $80, then in their minds, DK Bananza was a $90 game. And sadly, that is, in reality, what we have here. Sure, you can argue that this DLC is relatively small, inconsequential, not worth $20, and people can be happy with their $70 purchase and simply skip over this. Yeah, kind of. But it's very clear to me that the content of this game was always intended to be a part of the base game. Playing it, every little thing about it says this is your completion reward. Hell, they don't even try to hide it. You have to complete the game to be able to access the DLC, even though you've paid for it. Like I said, it is not unrelated side content, like, for example, Bowser's Fury, the upcoming Bella Bell Park, or even Jamboree TV. It's the stuff that you get after you finish the game. And if it was free completion bonuses that were just super nice surprises to unlock, we would all be glazing it to hell, talking about how amazing it is and how cool the devs are for making it as a thank you to the fans. And I'm not blaming the devs here. I'm sure we'll never get confirmation because NDAs and public image nonsense, but it is so clear that this is actually what this is. But some higher-ups at Nintendo felt that $70 was too cheap for such an awesome game and wanted to bleed more money out of the fans. Basically, if you want the full game, the full experience, the one the devs slaved over for years and clearly put an unfeasible amount of love, care, passion and attention into every minute detail into making the best possible game that they could. If you want that full experience of DK Bananza, the director's cut of the game, if you will, then basically you need this. Sure, you don't need it from a value or gameplay perspective. No. If we didn't know that it existed, Bananza feels basically perfect without it. But if you are a real fan and you fall in love with it as much as I did and admire it as truly one of the greatest games ever made for any format in any decade, now that you know that it exists, the game will suddenly feel incomplete without it, to many people. I am annoyed that it costs $20. Angry, perhaps. Logically, it doesn't feel like $20 worth of value. But does DK Bananza feel like a $90 game with it included? Yes, it does. I hate it. I was much happier singing its praises of being good value at $70. And now there is a big but in capital letters. They've basically made Bananza a $90 game by stealth. And I hate that. Does it make me like Bananza any less? No. It's still my favourite game on the Switch too. Still arguably the reason to buy the console in the first place, and is still contender for my favourite game of all time, despite this somewhat cynical move from Nintendo. It's not the fault of the devs who have made what is close to a flawless experience, clearly crafted with so much love. It just drips out of every polygon and pixel. So, $90, it's an insane price. But I still think it feels worth it, especially when compared to the prices being charged for deluxe versions of much worse games right now. Yearly sports titles, I'm looking at you. But even if I can get over the combined price tag, do you know what I hate? What I really, really hate? This essential part of the game, the part that was always meant to be included but then sliced off to eke a few dollars out from unsuspecting punters, but absolutely 100% needs to be there for the game to be the true finished vision of the uber-talented developers. It's not on the cartridge. How many times have we talked on this channel about game keycards, code in a box, day one patches, all the things that essentially are ruining games preservation and making everything ethereal and reliant on servers that will inevitably disappear as soon as Nintendo feels like they are no longer providing shareholder value on the maintenance costs. My trusty cartridge does not hold the complete game as wished by the developers. I used to think that it did. And now, the only way for me to own a physical copy of the complete experience will be to one day download a pirated ROM image of something that I paid real money for and play it on an emulator or jailbroken hardware. More and more these days, I look at the NES, SNES, Game Boy N64 and more cartridges that I collect, and I just realize that that world no longer exists. But as a games dev myself, I can try to keep it going, in my small corner at least. Releasing this tiny slice of content as paid DLC 2 months after release is a good business decision, but it's one that I would personally never, ever take with my own games. It's anti-consumer, it's anti-preservation, it's anti-developer, and it is anti-art. I know Nintendo is a huge corporation, but this is arguably the greatest contribution to games that they've made in the last 5 years, perhaps in the last decade. And in order to make a quick buck, they've desecrated it with little care for what the devs would want, what the fans would want, or what's even going to be best for them as a company in the long term when looking back. It's a stupid, short-sighted, short-term decision.
Well, that was funny / sad / informative / stupid, wasn't it? Feel free to mentally redact to make that make sense with the clip that you just heard. I don't know what it was. I'm just recording a bumper. But if you enjoyed the clip, please give it a like. If you'd like to hear more, click subscribe, and you can find all the ways to listen to and support the full daily podcast at linktree/dailyswitch2. That's linktr.ee/daily switch 2. Let's go! Did I sound like I mean that? I do. I really do.